Hey everybody, welcome back. So tomorrow my dad is going to be in town and we're going to celebrate a late birthday dinner with him. And I'm really excited. I'm cooking dinner, but more importantly, I wanted to try this cheesecake recipe that I'm going to do in my Ninja Foodi. It was originally made for Instant Pot. It was an Instant Pot recipe. So it can be done in that, but it can be entirely done in the Foodi if you want to. So for this recipe, you need a springform pan or a lined round cake pan, and I'll put a link to this in the description below. You need some graham crackers. I'm using Annie's organic honey grahams, so I have 10 of them here that I'm going to process in my Cuisinart food processor. And you need about 4 tablespoons of melted butter. And so this is what we're going to use to make the crust. So I'm just going to go ahead and break these graham crackers in half and put them into my food processor, and we'll give them a nice little pulse to get them into a fine, not powder, but just, crummy texture. And if you don't have a processor, you can use a blender or you can just put it in a Ziploc baggie and pound it with a frying pan or a cutting board or whatever and just get it all pound up into little crumbs. Now that it's all ground up into a nice crumb texture, I'm going to add this to this little stainless steel mixing bowl that I have over here. I'm just going to make sure that my blade doesn't fall out and just get all these crumbs off the bottom. And with this crust, your options are you can either freeze it for an hour just to get it nice and firm, or you can blind bake it for 15 minutes in the oven. And I'm going to go ahead and blind bake it. And so because I'm doing that, I'm going to add a half a cup of all-purpose flour. I'm using paleo flour, but you can use, regular flour if you want. And you also don't have to add this if you don't want to. It just helps make sure that it binds well and it gives you a little bit of a crispier crust. So I'm going to mix this up here, get it all mixed with the graham crackers, and then I'm going to add in my melted butter. And so this is just my organic Kerrygold. Mine is salted, and so I won't be adding a pinch of salt into the crust mixture. But if you're using unsalted butter, then you'll add a little pinch of salt as well. So we're just going to mix this all up until it's nice and incorporated. And it's not going to stick together like a dough or anything. It's still going to be very crumbly. But when we pour it into our pan here, we'll be able to press it together. And that's the consistency that we're looking for. So the final ingredient for our crust is just a couple of tablespoons of light brown sugar. And that's just to give it a little bit of extra sweetness since the honey grahams aren't very sweet. So we'll just mix that in for our final little stir, and then we'll pour it into our pan. And you can line this pan with a baking sheet if you like. You'll want to if it's not a springform pan or if it's not one that has the push bottom, or else you won't be able to get your cheesecake out of the pan. So since mine's a springform pan, I'm not lining it. It's just, it makes it wrinkly and it's one more thing to do. So once you have the crumbs all spread out, you just want to get them even. And you want to go ahead and make sure that you have a little bit extra around the edges so that when you press this out, it kind of goes up the side a little bit. So we're just going to take our cup here and just press it down. And you can see now that our crust is kind of sticking together. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So we're just going to go ahead and press this out and make sure that it goes up the sides just a little bit. That way the cheesecake filling won't spill out and go underneath the crust at all. It'll kind of stay within it. And also, because of how we have this crust going, it's actually going to be able to make sure that nothing seeps out of the bottom. Since it's not really a waterproof, leak-proof pan, it has the bottom that's removable, then this will help really make sure that our filling stays inside. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and mix up our filling. So for that we need 16 ounces of room temperature cream cheese, half a cup of room temperature sour cream, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 2 large room temperature eggs. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the vanilla extract here to my sour cream because we're going to beat the cream cheese first, then add the sour cream and extract, and then the eggs separately. The remaining ingredients are 2/3 a cup of white sugar. I'm using organic cane sugar, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 2 pinches of salt. So I'm using Himalayan salt. You can use whatever you have. And I'm just going to go ahead and add that here, and we'll mix it all together, and that will be incorporated last into our filling. Now we're going to use our hand mixer to beat our mixture. So this is just the cream cheese, and so we'll beat it on medium for about 10 to 20 seconds. If you want a creamier texture, then you'll do each of these steps for about a minute each, and that'll just give you a creamier, smoother cream cheese. Now we're going to add in our half of our sugar mixture. Beat it for about 20 to 30 more seconds until it's incorporated. Add the other half of our sugar mixture, beat it again, and then add the sour cream, and finally the eggs. Make sure that you do wipe down the sides of your bowls and your beaters in between each step to make sure it's fully incorporated. Now we have our crust that we've baked, and we're going to go ahead and add our mixture into it. You can see this is not like the super creamy, smooth texture because I didn't beat it a minute for each step, but it's still super delicious, and it's a little bit fluffier. It's a little denser in my opinion, I guess, but very good. So just go ahead and scrape the bowl out, get this into the crust, and we're going to smooth it out, and then we need to tap it on the counter several times to get all of the air bubbles out. And so we're just going to go ahead and do this process until all air bubbles stop coming to the top, and that'll keep it from getting any big pits or holes in it, or even I know one person that had a huge air bubble and her whole cheesecake exploded when she cooked it, so not the best. We will be cooking this in my Foodi, so I'm going to add 1 cup of water to the bottom of that, and we're going to actually go ahead and turn this on to saute. So the best way to avoid a big pressure dent in your cheesecake is to bring the water to a boil, and then we'll place the cheesecake in once it's at a rolling boil. Put the lid on and cook it for 28 minutes on high pressure, and that will reduce the long pressure building time, which is what causes a big dent in your cheesecake and makes it just not look pretty. Not a big deal if you don't want to do this. If you don't, just I'll put the time below for how long you need to cook it on high. But I'm going to do it this way, so you bring it to a boil and then add the cheesecake. Place your lid on. Make sure it's on seal. And then pressure cook high for 28 minutes. Okay, our 28 minutes are up, and we're going to allow it to natural release completely. And so we'll just wait for the red pin to drop, which will take about 7 to 9 minutes. So now that it's dropped, we'll remove our lid. Be careful of the steam. Don't want to get it on your face. Look at that beautiful cheesecake. Oh, it looks gorgeous. It does have a little bit of pitting. I didn't get all the air bubbles out. The banging on the cabinet was maybe bothering my parents a little bit, so I stopped. So I attempted to make a pecan praline topping for this. It ended up tasting delicious, but I used a recipe that I really wasn't sure about, and it didn't set how I wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll put the recipe for this down below. But in the future, I would definitely do a different one. I'm going to try one that has butter in it. So this is just 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of light brown sugar. You're going to mix that up. And instead of corn syrup, I used honey because I don't do corn syrup. And so we're going to add, it's a cup of honey. And I used raw local honey, so we'll add that. And you just sit here and babysit it. And so you're going to bring it to a boil, make sure it doesn't stick. You have to stir it constantly. And then just let it get thick until it's the consistency you want. let it cool a little bit, and we'll pour it over the cheesecake, and then we'll let the cheesecake sit in the refrigerator overnight. The cheesecake will be cool once I pour this on, so it's not going onto a hot cheesecake. And we will get this out and we'll try it. Like I said, in the future, I would use, really the only difference is you add butter, and I think that that'll help to set it more. So, but I'll go ahead and show you this one. Our sauce, that's looking done, and so we'll just go ahead and take this off and let it cool. So now that our sauce is cooled, you can see it's nice and sticky and firm. And so we'll add it to the top of our cheesecake, which is also cooled. It hasn't sat overnight yet. That's what we'll wait until the topping's on, and then we'll let it sit overnight. So we'll just spread this out evenly. And then you want to put this into the refrigerator and let it sit at least 4 to 8 hours minimum, but it's best if you can let it sit overnight. That'll help it really set the best and let it be the best texture, and then we'll be ready to cut into it and eat.